Hello, my name is Alexander Velky and I'm here to interview Mr. Alexander Velky.
Hello.
About the poetry book Mistaken for Art or Rubbish, published by Doubtist books in July 2013.
Yes.
So basically what we're going to do today, Mr. Velky.
Yes.
Can I call you Alex?
Yes.
Okay, Alexander. What we're going to do today is we're going to run through your book, Mistaken for Art or Rubbish, and we're going to ask you to take us through each poem in the order that they appear in the book. Okay?
Yes, I'll be very happy to.
Great. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Please don't fund my art.
Please don't fund my art. Right.
Why shouldn't we fund your art?
Well, it's a statement of intent, isn't it? I wrote this poem and then it was used to promote the Kickstarter campaign, so obviously there's a contradiction there. But essentially it's about the disconnect between artistic intent and patronage.
Why should people fund your art?
People should fund my art because they can be certain that in doing so they will not compromise the end result, because unlike every other artist, all the other artists that I'm sort of implying by mentioning these various places like Arts Council England and Highland Toffee, of course, well known for promoting poetry throughout the British Isles, basically they can be confident that I will not compromise my vision. So whatever they pay for, they will not be getting it. They will just be getting me and my art as I see it. Also because I can't fund it myself. I don't have very much money.
Has your uncle in New Zealand perished yet?
I don't have an uncle in New Zealand. That is the first of many artistic liberties that are taken in this collection. Lies, if you will. I have uncles in all manner of places. England, Wales.
Right.
Yeah, just England and Wales, I think, actually.
And what have you got against Arts Council England?
I haven't really got anything against Arts Council England per se. It's more what they represent. The fact that almost every poetry book you see published in England will have that little Arts Council England logo on the bottom. It just seems a bit pathetic to me that, I mean, the implication of anything like this, as far as I'm concerned, is that people who don't want to read poetry are, through a tiny portion of their tax, paying for people who do want to read poetry, and you don't really have to pay to read poetry.
Okay. Alchemy.
Alchemy is really about that fraught relationship between art, between artist and benefactor or benefactress. It's really about how being paid to do what you want to do, if you're an artist, will result in you doing what you don't want to do. You can be a teacher, you can facilitate others' artistic visions using your own artistic ability, and that is a very worthy thing to do. But you cannot practice art full-time as a job and have any kind of job.
Simon Turner, in his review for Sidekick Books, described this poem as punishing.
Punishing, yeah, it is punishing. It's long, yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, it's 16 verses long.
It is too long though, isn't it?
Yeah, you can see it's quite long there on the page. I mean, I could understand if you could just read the first couple of verses, maybe then the last couple. I mean, same difference, doesn't matter to me. I just, thought people might enjoy reading the poem. Obviously I was wrong. That's fine.
He says satire, to be effective, has to have some grounding in reality, but no poet in living memory ever got rich from writing.
I think it does have a grounding in reality. I know, obviously you're not supposed to believe that the poet in question has literally turned his poetry into gold. You're not even supposed to believe that there is literally a poet out there who's being paid loads to do their job, but it's allegorical, for God's sake. It could apply to any art. It doesn't have to. It's not just about poetry. And the fact that the person is a poet is purely for the sake of it, for convenience's sake.
How do you excuse the violent sexual imagery toward the end of the poem?
Violent sexual imagery, it's not really violent, is it? It's not really sexual necessarily. I mean,
to bend over, you know, you could be receiving a firm paddling or a spanking to the behind. That doesn't have to be sexual. That's just violent imagery. It's just violent. Violent. If you think that's sexual, it probably says something about you. Sucking will soon become second nature. Does that mean sucking? You know, not necessarily. Not necessarily cock. You could suck anything. I mean, really, it's using the kind of language of America, isn't it? You know, dude, that sucks, like they say in American films and things. I mean, it probably at some point might have had a reference to something maybe sexual or violently sexual, but really here it's just the quote is from the person who's like the money person. They're saying, hey, bend over, you know, take your punishment. Sucking will soon be second nature. It's just American. It's not. I mean, if it's violent and sexual, then it's America's fault, not mine. Have you, Alexander, mastered the equation of turning poetry into gold? I have not mastered the equation of turning poetry into gold, no. I have mastered the equation of turning poetry into a physical object, and that was not as difficult as I thought it might be. Basically, you put a thing on the internet telling your close friends and family that you've done something and you want them to pay for it, and I mean, you don't even have to do poetry for that. You could just be like running in a race for cancer or something. Like if you were a better person, that's probably what you would do. Have you, Alexander, mastered the equation of turning poetry into shit? You can't eat it, so no. I've mastered the equation of turning food into shit, but that's kind of something that, I mean, both of my daughters have learned that, and one of them is only 6 months old. A duck with two heads. What's it about? It's quite similar to the last poem, really. It's about sort of sacrifices that you make that might compromise your artistic vision. Actually, in this case, it's more of a kind of deal with the devil situation. The devil in this case being a duck. A deal with the devil duck, if you will. I think I stole that from Futurama. But basically, yeah, the person in the poem has made some sort of deal with a two-headed duck in the past, and for some sort of artistic ability, maybe, you know, that bit of fire, the muse, the thing that makes your work great. And now the duck, or ducks, depending on how you view a two-headed animal, has or have come back to reap the debt. Simon Turner says it might raise a titter from a suitably lubricated audience towards the end of an open mic night, but on the page it's little more than a whimsical squib that manages to test the patience of the reader in spite of its brevity. Yeah, Simon Turner did say that, didn't he? That was Simon Turner was making a point in his blog review of this. This is performance poetry, which was news to me because I'd never performed it, but I don't disagree with him. Does it test my patience? Not so much. I mean, it's only just a page long. I think Simon Turner doesn't have a very great attention span, and I do blame modern technology for that. What do you think would be a suitable lubrication for an audience at an open mic night? Suitable lubrication? I mean, he means alcohol, doesn't he? But WD-40? Yeah, WD-40, yeah. Yeah, Vaseline. Olive oil? It really depends what you're lubricating, and an open mic audience is 70% water anyway, so it shouldn't need much lubrication. Does this poem have anything at all to say about art? For me, what it says about art is be careful what you sacrifice in order to practice your art. Or be careful. Be careful. Just be careful. Yeah, be careful. Poems about nothing. What is this poem about? Poems about nothing is a poem about nothing. It is completely artistically worthless in a way. Well, not worthless, more kind of dada. I just kind of threw it out. I just sat down on my laptop in pool in my apartment overlooking Holes Bay, saw some guys digging out there and thought, I'm just going to write a poem about that, whether or not it inspires me. And it turns out it didn't inspire me hugely, but nevertheless I wrote it and it's there. But I mean, it was about watching some men digging, really. It was about watching some men digging.
A man in this. It was about watching one man digging.
A bit like Seamus Heaney's more famous and more popular and better poem, Digging.
A bit like that, yeah. But I don't know if his poem's necessarily better than mine. I mean, more people like it. That's definitely true. But they do different things, don't they? I mean, they are the same, sort of, but they do different things. I mean, his wasn't really about anything, was it? Seamus Heaney's poem wasn't really about anything either. That was a poem about nothing.
But it was. It was about class and heritage and the Troubles. It was about
Well,
his
this
father.
is about class. I mean, I'm middle class, so I'm sitting in my apartment writing a poem, and they're, I don't know, digging class, so they're digging. Yeah. It's not about the Troubles. Not about troubles. It's about my troubles, I suppose, if I have. I don't have a sectarian, kind of ongoing sectarian civil war going on.
Simon Turner describes this poem as a tad mean-spirited. What would you say about that?
I don't think it's mean-spirited, because it is actually a poem about me. I could understand how if you didn't know me and you'd read this, you could think, oh, he's taking the piss out of half-assed middle-class poets here, but it was actually just me writing about my own experience. So make of that what you will.
Do you often watch men labouring?
I do often watch men. I used to watch women too, but it doesn't seem polite now that I'm married. And since the restraining order.
Okay, next one. An interest in cartography. It's long, isn't it?
Yeah, it's long. I mean, if you think that's long, you should read The Bloody Wastelander. So none of my poems go over 2 spreads, so that's, 4 sides. It's long-ish. It was difficult to learn, but it's, you could read that in an afternoon.
It's not really about art, is it?
I did struggle with deciding whether or not to put this one in the collection, because it's not explicitly about art, but it does have art in the title. If you look in between the C and the ography, in the word cartography, art. Map making is a form of art. And also I wrote it, so writing it was a form of art. Also, I think it can be said to be about art in a way. I can't remember how. How do you excuse the violent sexual imagery? I don't think there is any violent sexual imagery in this poem.
How do you excuse the tiresome metaphors?
Oh, the tiresome metaphors. Well, I excuse them because it's a poem. I can't really excuse the tiresomeness, but I do think I'm allowed to use metaphors in a poem.
Martin Brady likes your link.
Martin Brady is a man who exists on the internet. I did meet him once in a pub where he was playing bass for his band Mac Show, and I bought him a pint of Guinness because it seemed like the polite thing to do. And he drank it, which likewise probably seemed like the polite thing to do. He used to, he doesn't so much anymore actually, maybe not since I wrote this poem, he used to like things on Facebook that I would post, sometimes poems. And when you spend a lot of your time, like me, writing poems at home, you don't know if they're any good or not, you kind of suspect maybe they're not. You never perform them in public, you never really show them to anyone else, but you occasionally post them on Facebook. It really cannot be overstated how much that means when somebody clicks like on it. Well, I may have overstated it in this poem, but otherwise you couldn't overstate it.
I don't really have any questions about this one.
But I don't know, it's quite a likeable poem, I think. Another Martin Brady liked this poem when I put it on YouTube. Somebody else that was called Martin Brady said, I'm Martin Brady and I like this poem. So, there could be something in that. I write poems about all sorts of names of people. There's that guy that does that, isn't he? The best birthday song band in the world, and he's got millions of songs that are all the same song but with a different name in the title. I could be the poetry version of that guy. Chris Akabusi likes your link. Winston Churchill likes your link. Simon Turner likes your link. Roger Federer likes your link. Christine Hamilton likes your link. Boris Yeltsin likes your link. You know, the list is endless, the list of people. There's loads.
That brings us to the art factory. The art factory was my attempt to, well, my third or fourth attempt in this particular book, to kind of distill the idea of how art could become drudgery if you have to do something rather than if you're really choosing to do something. And in this instance there is a sort of a narrator in the poem who literally works in a literal factory where they literally make art. Sorry, I'll stop saying literally now. And it's about the drudgery of that, and the form and the kind of shape of the poem is meant to carry that home too. It is like drudgery to read it. There are numerous references in the poem to famous works of modern art. The tin soup, that's Andy Warhol, I believe. The coloured dots, I presume that's Damien Hirst, who of course you mentioned several times in the book. And then there's the spray-painted rats. Is that Banksy? Yeah, it sort of was going to be Banksy, but then I read about Banksy a bit and realised that he stole most of his ideas off Blake Le Rat, a French guy who also painted rats. So yeah, it could be about Blake Le Rat, but actually I think it's about the post-Banksy Banksy, let's call him, I don't know, Building Society C, or Chris. We'll call him Chris. Yeah, it's about Chris, and Chris is a guy who kind of spray paints subversive things on walls. He's a graffiti artist, if you will. He's probably from the West Country, you know, Shepton Mallet, somewhere like that. And yeah, he's kind of started off life spray painting slogans and rats and things on the outside wall of this place. So yeah, he's quite counterculture and quite shaking it up a bit. But then they like what he's doing so much that they invite him inside. See what we're doing here? That's a metaphor. And yeah, and then he's like doing it on teacups and things for the gift shop. And he doesn't feel so fulfilled anymore. But to be honest, he's probably grateful to be being paid for it. Why is he reading Chaucer? Why is he reading Chaucer? That's a good point. Mainly because it rhymes with Chaucer, I'll be honest. But also, I like the idea that this guy who's kind of, you know, you have the idea of street art and subversive art and illegal art being kind of outside the system and kind of therefore cutting edge on that. But I like the idea that these people, or this person in particular, Chris, is really kind of conscious of canonical art, and in this sense literature. He's really conscious of the canon of literature and the way that might inform the way that he paints rats on cups and saucers. Who is the I in the poem? Is it you? It's not about me because I've never really had a job that's particularly artistic. It's about, I suppose it's about how I feel life could have gone had I got an arts job. It's kind of me consoling myself for ending up working in marketing, really, in advertising. My art is greater than your art. I almost didn't put this in. It's kind of, I mean, if any of them are meant to be performed, this is, and I've never performed it. And I kind of don't want to because it was written really to satirise performance poetry. Not, obviously I like some performance poetry, it's to satirise the performance poetry that exists purely for performance, or purely so that someone can be on a stage having people look at them. I'm not interested in being on stage having people look at me. I can be in the street having people look at me. I can be on the internet having people look. I don't stages. You know, I can take or leave them. Controversial poem. Simon Turner says this poem does a passable job of pastiching an ugly self-aggrandising strain in certain sectors of slam poetry, undermined in the final analysis by the tired shock, cock, rhyme, which it concludes with. Sorry, it's quite distracting actually. There's like a tractor convention or something. There's a load of tractors going past. I don't know. Can we cut that? How do you excuse my cock? How do I excuse my cock? Well, I just, you know, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's all bravado. I kind of thought the poem had to end with my cock because that's what everyone's saying when they're up there on the stage. Look at my cock, or my vagina, but I don't have a vagina, so I didn't think it was appropriate if I was the high voice of the poem to put my vagina in there, so I used my cock. And apparently putting my cock in there really upset Simon Turner and the guy from New Welsh Review as well. Neither of them approved of my cock. João Moraes João Moraes.
Wow.
I'm not sure how to
Moraes.
pronounce his name. João. J-Wow.
J-Wow.
J-Wow? Like Jay-Z or J-Lo or J.K. J.K. Rowling. J-Wow.
I don't know how to say his name either. I will call him Mr. Moraes. Mr. Moraes.
J-Wow says this is one of your better poems, and he hated the book.
I think he's wrong, but he's entitled to his opinion.
He said, in typical Velky fashion, the whole thing is mired by a crude finish which adds nothing to the poem, but takes away everything from its respectability and potential. He's talking about my cock again.
Obviously I'm going to disagree with that. I think it adds my cock to the poem, and without my cock in the poem it would just be hinting at all the bravado. And really it needs taking down to that level for me. It needs taking down to the basis level. It needs to end with my cock.
It seems that he means you, cannot help himself when it comes to self-sabotage. Can you help yourself?
I probably could, if I really wanted. Self-sabotage is a lot of the fun of art for me. It's no fun doing things properly. You want to do things properly, be a plasterer or I don't know, some sort of engineer or something. Doing art is about failing for me. Failing, yeah. Massive. And being a massive failure, yeah. Being a really... Cheers. Top 10 indefinities ever. It's come quite far away from its concept, I think. Its concept was a reaction to the commodification of content on the internet, or a reaction to really the presentation of the written word on the internet. It came to a point, it's really there now, but it came to a point a few years ago where everything I saw on the internet, everything people were reading on the internet, everything people were linking to on the internet, everything that was being commissioned on the internet was a numbered list of things. And I thought how lovely it would be if you could make things, anything, that simply could not be put into one of those lists, that had no hope of ever being in one of those lists. And this is what my attempt was here, to make a list of 10 things that couldn't be in a list. And they're short stories, really. Is indefinities a word? I don't know if that's a word. It definitely is now. There's probably another word for what I was trying to express with that word, and what I was trying to express was something which cannot be compared with other things.
Are the stories true?
Some of the stories are true, but most of them are not. Some of them may accidentally be true, some of them are based on truth.
Perhaps you should take us very briefly through each story.
The first story is about a Coptic bishop who thinks that a prawn talks to him, or a shrimp, and he always thinks that for the rest of his days. Simple story. Oh, thought that shrimp talked to me. That's weird. Put that on a list and BuzzFeed it. At 9, yeah, that's a crusade story, and it's just miracles and kind of magic and I suppose hallucinations. It's just about one of them that could well have happened. The Russian painter, that is a real painter, and to my shame, to my eternal shame, I can't remember his name, but the painting is one of my favourite paintings because I feel it subverts the male gaze, which is the mainstay of classical art and has been for centuries. And maybe it doesn't subvert it, maybe it just supports it, but I feel it subverts it. It's a domovoi, which is like a kind of Russian house spirit from folklore, and he's kind of drawing back a daze or a curtain or whatever you call them, and looking at a naked woman sleeping. And this kind of mythical creature, this animal, to me, kind of symbolises probably both the painter and painting and kind of art and the maleness of classical art. But the actual painting itself technically is really beautiful. It's kind of slightly impressionist. The colours are all dreamlike and kind of blues and pinks and floaty. I don't know, I just love looking at it. To me it raises so many questions, and that's what art should do. I don't know if it really has anything to do with
Russian history at that time, but again, you can't look at it and not think of it, or I can't. The wolf being lost at sea, that's not true, but it could be true. I just like the idea of a against the odds escape, a daring escape from certain death by an animal that has not been turned into a Disney film because nobody ever knew about it. And I also like the idea that animals can learn these amazing, complicated concepts, but that they don't necessarily make the leaps that we do. And similarly, by association, that we might not make the leaps that they do. Excuse me, self-immolation, yeah, this was a big deal in India a while back. I don't think it is so much anymore, but this is kind of a hard luck story. This is the sort of thing that could be in the song Ironic by Alanis Morissette. Yeah, the Portuguese conquistador. That's kind of possible. This poem does technically place El Dorado on the wrong side of South America, but hey, who gives a damn? Yeah, the weekend in Bath where jellyfish rained from the skies, that is apparently true. It was reported in newspapers in 1894. There are various stories which people are very fond of. One was featured in the film Magnolia, of animals falling from the sky due to curious meteorological circumstances. Number 3, with a bullet. That phrase is actually from the American music industry and is not at all appropriate for use in a story about a Jewish merchant in Venice. And obviously that is a Shakespearean takeaway. It's a reference to Shylock and it subverts that story, saying that the Jewish guy in question is running from people to whom he owes money and ends up falling in love with a gondolier. Number 2, yeah, that's there's a lot of tautology in there, and that is deliberate. It's partly about the way people confuse and abuse words and confuse and abuse narratives of sort of sexual intrigue. Yeah, there's this guy who's dating twins, and like, you know, that's kind of a well-known, or at least well-discussed male fantasy. To me, it sounds like a nightmare to be seeing two women at the same time. Anyway, but two women that look the same, I don't even really see why that would be hugely attractive. Obviously, I suppose if you're attracted to one, you're attracted to the other. But beyond that, I mean, surely one's plenty. Oh, sorry, I was just eating a bit of ham. That's better. And the final story. The last one seems a bit lacking. Yeah, no, I don't think it's lacking, but it was deliberately put in there to kind of end on a, you know, not with a bang but a whimper, because the thing is, to make up the numbers on these lists, there's always at least one, if not more, that's kind of a bit doesn't really fit with the list. And even of my list of things that don't really fit in lists, I wanted there to be one that didn't really fit there, and that's what that is. But really, that is about the writer of the story, or stories. It's just a bit shit. It's not very good. I think I'm good enough, and that's good enough for me. Your Nazi Tattoo. Your Nazi Tattoo is a poem about a man with a Nazi tattoo. But the man in the poem, and now here's the twist, the man in the poem doesn't want it anymore. But it's a tattoo, so he can't get rid of it. This poem exists in the world where laser tattoo removal is not really a thing. Who is this about? It's really about separating art and artist, and should you do it? What can you gain from doing it? What can you lose from doing it? And can you enjoy someone's art if they are a Nazi? Or, more importantly, can you enjoy someone's art if at some point they had views which you didn't agree with? Honestly, I think the answer to both is, of course, yes. Is there such a thing as Nazi poetry? I think this could be it. It's a bit hot in here. Is it just me? What do we want now? A verse for the averse. A verse for the averse. A verse for the averse. Well, as it says at the top, it was written for a woman called Marjorie. And I used to follow her blog, and she used to follow mine when I had a poetry blog. And at some point she told me she had writer's block and asked me could I write something for her to help her get out of it, I guess. Or I wrote this poem anyway. I think it's the earliest poem in the book. It's years old. I wrote it about writer's block, but about how I sort of didn't really believe in writer's block. About how the best cure for writer's block is writing. Do you ever suffer from writer's block? I don't really suffer from writer's block, but I don't write hugely prolifically. I don't write a lot. When I write, I tend to just write and then it's done. I suffer from editor's block in that I don't really edit very much, as you will know if you've read this book. Have you ever considered blocking yourself, either figuratively or literally? With a medium, for example? Or expanding foam? No, I've never really thought about blocking myself, at least not by force. I mean, if I don't want to write, I don't write, so I don't really feel like I need to be blocked. Cement? I'd love to try some expanding foam. Not on myself though. Honey? I mean, honeycomb's a lot like expanding foam, really. At the end of this poem, there's a line, "None can fill my shoes." Someone could fill them with expanding foam. Yeah, I mean, you could fill your shoes with jelly or custard. Those are sort of examples of humorous things you could fill your shoes with, or honeycomb.
Rubbery stuff.
You could use expanding foam.
Silicon
to make it look like honeycomb. Cork. Or decorating cork. Just like old clothes or bandages. Yeah, I could fill my shoes with any number of things. What those again? That's a metaphor. Those shoes. That's a metaphor. I could as easily say none can wear my hat. You know, these are mass produced. Cost $1.99 from Amazon. But it's about what the metaphor. Why do you keep writing? What's the point? Well, I suppose the point is that I have a lot of questions about the world and about the things in the world and about the way that I understand them or don't understand them. So I use writing, I certainly use writing poetry as a way to try and give a voice to those questions, and that I might get some answers from someone one day. Have you ever been mistaken for art? I have been mistaken for art, actually. I was wandering around the Tate Britain one day in London about, got to be at least 5 years ago now, and I had the closest thing I've ever had to a hipster moustache, but it was actually just a moustache because it was on me, and I'm not a hipster, as far as I know. Anyway, so I was wandering around the Tate wearing a Renaissance doublet and a moustache and a sort of a hat with a skull on it, and some trousers rolled up so that they looked like old-fashioned trousers, but really they were just common or garden modern trousers. Anyway, I was wandering around the Tate, and some Spanish or possibly Portuguese tourists came up and asked if they could have their photo taken with me. So I can only assume that they either thought I was somebody famous, and really nobody famous would have been dressed in the clothes that I was wearing, or they thought that I was art or some kind of walking, living, breathing, eating, defecating exhibition. I wasn't defecating at the time, no, or eating. I was breathing. Have you ever been mistaken for rubbish? I have been mistaken for a tramp on numerous occasions, and the way our society has geared, a lot of people view homeless people as rubbish. And yeah, so in a way I have. I was in Bristol. I remember being in Bristol and going up to a guy to ask him the time, and he started sort of edging away saying, no, I don't have any money. And I didn't look threatening, like in a mugger kind of way. I mean, Northwestern European. That will probably do for now, I think. It's been nice talking to you. Was that it? Oh. Could you have kept my cock to yourself? Could you have had my cock in your head but left it off the page?